I'm Matt Chanway, and welcome to this free lesson on electric guitar improvisation. I think every electric guitar player goes through the stage where they're learning how to solo and they just have a feeling like their playing just has this amateur sound to it. It might not be totally clear why their playing sounds amateur, but they know if they listen to a recording of an electric guitar player they admire and then compare it to a recording of themselves, it's just not the same caliber. Regardless of what style of electric guitar playing we're looking at, the players we love and look up to sound inventive and fresh every time they solo. And their improvising seems like a bottomless pit of creative ideas that flow together endlessly. By comparison, you may feel like when you solo, it sounds quite unimaginative. Either you're kind of just mashing together licks that you've practiced without much musical cohesion, or maybe you're taking a stab at truly improvising within a scale, but when you do so, what you're playing just does not sound inspired or really even musical at all. So how does one fix this? Well, you could. Many elements of lead guitar involve training our brain and our reflexes, as well as our musical rudiments, which allow us to improvise comfortably and in a musical way, using a lot of subconscious elements. Some people say that if you start thinking while you're playing, you're screwed. And there's a lot of truth to this. But in order to get to that place where we can play without thinking, there's a bit of work that we have to put ourselves through first. Playing great lead guitar generally is not just as simple as somebody saying, hey, do this. However, today I do have a technique. It's a little uncommon in the sense that you actually kind of can just start doing it right away. And if you use this technique, it'll make your playing sound less robotic and more musical and organic sounding, like it's an actual human being improvising right away. And what I'm talking about here are grace notes. You may have played grace notes before, but probably not in the way I'm about to show you here today. A grace note is basically a note with little to no rhythmic significance. Now, to really get that quick sort of snap of a grace note, that sort of quick sound, it does take a little bit of speed in our left hand, but we don't have to be like guitar shredders to use grace notes effectively. If you're a little bit newer to this technique and what I'm doing seems really fast, just practice picking a note and positioning your hand in a way that your ring finger or whichever finger you use can snap to the note relatively quickly. That level of speed that I'm coming from doesn't come from like insane finger muscles. It just comes from a little bit of coordination and muscle memory. So if you can't do this yet, set aside a few minutes and just gradually work up to it, and you'll find it does come probably quicker than you might think. It's one thing to know how to use a technique, and entirely another thing to have it integrated into your playing to the point that you can use it tastefully. With that in mind, today I'm going to give you 5 licks that use this essential, and I'm saying essential because pretty much every respected lead guitar player uses grace notes. Let's dive in. So in this first example, we start off with the grace notes pretty early on. We have those 2 quick hammer-ons right away from fret 7 to fret 9 on the G string and then fret 5 to fret 7 on the G string. Then I'm just kind of doing a run up the A minor pentatonic scale, starting on the offbeat. I'm doing this, and then I finish with another grace note. So there's a quick little hammer-on from 5 to 8 on the high E string. I roll my finger over, get the 8th fret of the 2nd string, and then finish on the 5th fret of the 1st string. The next example we're going to look at is also based loosely around the A minor pentatonic scale or A blues scale. We talked a little bit early on in the video about making our soloing sound less robotic. I like this example because what I'm playing is, again, relatively simple. I'm basically just descending down the A blues scale using a couple positions in the process of the scale. However, by throwing in a grace note, it really helps break up the constant stream of notes, and it gives this lick a nice fiery sound. So it's a great example where you can take something that's a relatively simple concept, throw in a grace note, and it really adds a subtle but noticeable difference. Let's check this one out. This next example shows how we can take a relatively simple walk down a scale, and by using a grace note, really add a bit more of like an organic or human touch to it. What I mean by that is I start off by just playing down the blues scale. I hit 14 and 17 on the G. The grace note is going from 12 to 14 on the G. And I just continue after that, it's just going straight down the A blues scale. But a great sounding little run or lick that can be pretty versatile within a given solo. This next example is going to be in the key of E minor pentatonic. This uses grace notes as well as incorporates a double stop where we hit 2 strings on a guitar and work a grace note in the mix there. This just kind of gives us a little bit of a sneak peek of what can happen when we take a technique and combine it with another technique. In other words, taking the grace notes and combining it with double stops. I really like the sound of this one, and I hope you do too. Let's check it out. In this example, we start with a bend, full step bend on the 15th fret of the high E string. You can give it a little vibrato at the top of the bend if you like. We then repeat that same bend, and that hammer on from 12 to 15 is our first grace note there. So we do the bend, bring it back down, go to 12, and then pick again and do a really quick hammer on to get that grace note, roll our finger over to 15 on the B, then hit 12 on the high E. I'm then going to continue down this E minor pentatonic scale, executing another grace note by picking the 12th fret on the 3rd string and hammering onto the 14th fret of the 3rd string. After the grace note, I'm going to roll over the ring finger to the 14th fret of the D string, get the pointer finger to the 12th fret of the 3rd string, hit the 14th fret of the 4th string, and I have another grace note used in tandem with a double stop, which I'm getting by barring the 12th frets of the 4th and 3rd strings and hammering onto the 14th frets of the 4th string. I finish the phrase by continuing to descend down the E minor pentatonic scale, finishing with a little quarter bend and then the 12th fret of the low E string. This next example has a couple of different note choices compared to some of the earlier ones. Specifically, it uses a bit more of some notes from the natural minor scale. The grace notes are going to add to the sound of this scale, which gives us a bit of a nice melodic sound. And the grace notes are just going to add a little bit of unpredictable bounce. And it's just going to give us that evasive effect of feel that we electric guitar players strive for. Let's check this one out. This fourth example starts with a nice little melodic idea, and the grace note really accentuates my coming back to the root note of this lick. Right there. I use another grace note to re-emphasize the root note, hitting the 7th and hammering onto the 9th, hitting the 8th fret of the 2nd string, and then bending the 10th fret of the 2nd string. Pull off to the 8th fret of the 2nd string and go back to the 10th fret of the 2nd string. This next part's a little tricky because on the offbeat I'm going to slide up 2 frets, and after that slide I'm going to use a grace note to get the 10th fret of the high E string to hammer onto the 12th fret of the high E string, and I'm going to finish by descending down the E blues scale. This last example is going to be in the key of G minor pentatonic. It uses a bit of a bluesy sort of motif type of idea, kind of a catchy sort of hooky, reoccurring little line. Coupled with the grace notes, this one is definitely a challenge to get your fingers around. However, it's a great sounding lick that you can use immediately in your playing, or you can use it as inspiration to create some licks of your own. The bottom line is the motif development and the grace notes make this a stellar sounding example that really encapsulates feel, another thing that we electric guitar players are always after. This last example starts with some unison bends, targeting the 15th fret of the 1st string, Nice sound there. We have a little repeating sort of motif type of idea. And I'm doing the hammer on from the 14th fret of the B string to the 15th fret of the B string. Then I'm going 15, 12, 15 on the G string. Next, I'm going to shift down one fret and I'm going to execute another grace note. A quick hammer on to the 14th fret of the B string. I'm then going to descend down the G minor pentatonic scale. There's a little sequence to it where I go 15, 12 on the G, 15 on the D, back up to 12 on the G, and then 15, 12 on the D. And I finish off this run by doing a grace note idea, picking the 15th fret of the A string, that's the grace note, and then hammering onto the 16th fret of the A string. Then I hit the 13th fret of the A string to finish off the idea. Okay, so that'll do it for the lesson today. Hopefully you enjoyed what you heard here and are feeling motivated to try out some of these ideas in your own playing. Remember, these exercises, if you work through them, you will see differences in your playing. You will. I absolutely promise. If you just kind of listen and say something like, grace notes, and kind of give a little bit of an excuse as to why you don't want to use grace notes in your playing, well, then obviously you're not going to really see any benefits from this video. But the bottom line is, all great electric guitar players use grace notes. You can sound better if you can comfortably use grace notes in your playing. Although you might have already played a grace note previously in your playing experience, I bet you can work them more firmly into your guitar playing and get better sounds as a result. So I hope you make that choice today and do that, because I think you'll have fun. I think you'll be a better player, and I think you'll be a better player for it. So thanks again for watching. If you enjoyed this, please feel free to drop me a like or a subscription or comment to this channel. Every little bit helps. Thanks again for watching. We'll catch you really soon with a brand new video. Cheers.